Enough of this, Alex. It's just about your payday.
Do you know who I am? Judge Harrington. Diane Reynolds, you are under arrest.
No, wait.
You think money can buy everything, don't you? I shouted over the roar of engines as a bulldozer clawed into my grandfather's cornfield. Step back, sir, the woman in the white blouse ordered, her voice calm, almost bored. You're trespassing on Sunny Pines development property. Sunny Pines? I scoffed. That's funny, because according to every memory I have, this is Miller farmland, my family's land. She raised a brow, lips curling into a smirk that didn't touch her eyes. Not anymore. You'll find the county records disagree. Behind her, a sign flapped in the wind. Future home of Sunny Pines East. Luxury living starts at $450,000. My fists clenched. My grandfather's soil, the one he died protecting, was being sold by the acre. Her name was Diane Reynolds, the kind of woman who carried herself like the world bent around her appointments. Beige pants, spotless heels in the dirt, and a tone so polished it could cut glass. If you have concerns, she said, you can take it up with our legal department. But I assure you, everything is perfectly legitimate. Legitimate? I laughed bitterly. Lady, I buried my grandfather here 3 months ago. He never sold this land. Diane tilted her head, feigning sympathy. Perhaps he didn't tell you. The sale was finalized last year. That line, perhaps he didn't tell you, hit me harder than I expected. Grandpa Joe had been sick, yes, but senile? Never. The man balanced his tractor books tighter than a government ledger. Something about her confidence felt rehearsed, like she'd said it to someone before. By sunset, I was standing on that same porch where I used to drink lemonade as a kid, staring at the chaos tearing through my inheritance. The quiet hum of Meadow Creek had been replaced with diesel fumes and mechanical screams. Mrs. Thompson, my grandfather's neighbor for 40 years, stood waiting on the porch with a glass pitcher, sweating in the heat. They're really doing it, Alex, she said softly. Started yesterday morning. Big yellow machines. Just digging. Her voice trembled. Your grandpa told them they had no right. Did he ever mention selling? I asked. Never. He said this land would stay in your family forever. Her eyes glistened. The day before he went to the hospital, he said he had to find something important, something to protect the farm. That night, I stepped into Grandpa's office for the first time since the funeral. The smell of pipe tobacco and engine oil hung in the air like a memory that refused to fade. Shelves lined every wall, old farm ledgers, weather logs, seed catalogs, each handwritten in his neat, careful script. He recorded every drop of rain and every repair he ever made. But nothing about selling the land. I searched through the filing cabinet until my eyes burned from reading faded ink. Just as I was about to give up, my foot hit something loose under the desk. A floorboard shifted. I pried it open with a letter opener and found a metal box, small and heavy. The key dangled from a nail underneath the desk, just where Grandpa would have left it. Inside were brittle papers, sealed envelopes, and one letter addressed to me in his handwriting. If you're reading this, someone's trying to take what's ours. My hands shook as I unfolded the letter. Grandpa's words were precise, deliberate. Developers have been circling for years. They offered money, pressure, fake promises about easements. I never signed. If they say I did, it's a lie. Compare the original survey to what's recorded now. The truth is in the boundaries. Beneath the letter was the original 1,910 property survey, yellowed and fragile. When I spread it next to the modern county map, my heart stopped. The borders didn't match. The old survey showed nearly 280 acres, not the 200 listed in current records. Somewhere along the way, 80 acres, an entire section had been erased. Not just the new construction zone, but part of the existing Sunny Pines neighborhood. Sleep refused to come. I sat at the kitchen table under a single flickering light, comparing maps and deeds until dawn. The evidence was undeniable. The farm's boundaries had been forged. Somebody had redrawn history and stolen a chunk of my family's legacy. The question was who and how deep the corruption went. When the first sunlight hit the window, I packed the documents, folded Grandpa's letter into my pocket, and whispered, "I won't let you down." Outside, the bulldozers paused for morning prep, their engines idling like growling beasts waiting for orders. Diane Reynolds thought she'd met another grieving relative who'd backed down. She had no idea she'd just declared war on a man who'd inherited more than land. He'd inherited a trap already set by his grandfather. By 8 a.m., I stood outside the office of Walter Franklin, the only property attorney in Meadow Creek with a reputation for integrity. His secretary gave me a polite but skeptical look when I demanded an emergency appointment. "So," Walter said as I spread the documents across his desk, "you believe Sunny Pines is building on land that belongs to you?" "Not believe," I said. "I know." He adjusted his glasses, scanning both the 1,910 and 1,978 surveys, tracing the faded lines with his finger. His brows knitted together, then lifted. "Well, Mr. Morgan, this is extraordinary. According to these records, your property extends nearly half a mile farther east than what's currently recorded. That would include the new development and the Sunny Pines clubhouse, and about 20 homes," I finished. Walter leaned back, sighing heavily. "A boundary dispute this large won't be easy. We'll need to file for an emergency injunction before they finish construction." He picked up the phone and called the county assessor's office, putting the line on speaker. After a series of transfers, an employee finally confirmed the impossible. A boundary modification had been filed in 1997, signed with a shaky scrawl that was supposed to be my grandfather's. My stomach turned. "He couldn't have signed that," I said. "He was in the hospital for heart surgery that entire month." Walter's tone darkened. "Then we're not dealing with error. We're dealing with fraud." The word hung heavy in the room. Fraud. It wasn't a mistake. It was theft, dressed in paperwork. Walter drafted the injunction immediately. "We'll need a professional surveyor and every public record connected to Sunny Pines development," he said. "You gather the proof. I'll stop them from moving another inch." His confidence steadied me. Leaving his office, I drove straight to the county records department, where dust-covered boxes held the ghosts of every deal ever made in Meadow Creek. Hours passed as I sifted through corporate filings and property transfers. And then, I found it. The same 6 names appeared again and again. Diane Reynolds, Thomas Reynolds, Commissioner James Harris, Planning Director Mark Wilson, 2 unknown partners. But one document made my pulse race. A loan approval for $16 million issued just 3 months ago, listing my land as collateral. That was the smoking gun. I snapped photos of every page, knowing this wasn't just corruption, it was a conspiracy. They weren't just stealing land, they were laundering power through it. By the time I walked into the Meadow Creek Gazette, I was running on caffeine and anger. Tanya Williams, the editor, looked up from her desk. "Alex Morgan? Joe's grandson?" I nodded, dropping the folder onto her desk. "I think Sunny Pines is sitting on a lie big enough to bury half this town." Tanya's eyes flicked through the papers, her journalist instincts kicking in. "If what you're saying is true, this isn't just a zoning error," she said. "It's criminal fraud." "Then let's expose it," I urged. She shook her head slowly. "Not without verification, but I can dig." The approval process for Sunny Pines East did move faster than anything I've seen. Her caution didn't surprise me. In Meadow Creek, stepping on powerful toes could cost you everything. Still, she kept one copy of the survey and promised to look into it. Back at the farmhouse, Mrs. Thompson was waiting again, worry etched deep into her face. "Alex, I heard the judge granted a temporary stop on construction," she said. I nodded. "For now." She poured sweet tea into 2 glasses, her hands shaking. "Your grandpa always said this land would fight back if someone tried to take it." I smiled faintly. "Then it's time to let it." Outside, the wind rustled through the fields that used to feed a generation. Somewhere beneath that soil, my grandfather had buried more than roots. He'd buried proof, patience, and a plan, and I had just begun to dig it up. When I looked across the horizon, I could almost see him standing there, pipe in hand, hat tipped against the sun, watching me take the first swing in a battle he started long ago. What Diane Reynolds didn't know was that every fence post, every map, and every inch of that land still carried his fingerprints. She wasn't just fighting a grandson, she was stepping straight into the trap of a dead man. Her expression faltered. She hadn't expected me to know. I could see it, the faint shift in her posture, the quick glance toward her car like she wanted to flee the scene. But she recovered fast, voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually," I said, "I know exactly who you are." She smirked. "Everyone has a price." "Not everyone," I replied, turning to leave. Behind me, she shouted, "Commissioner Harris is my husband's golf partner. The judge who signed that order eats at my house every month. You think your little paper will hold?" I didn't answer, but her panic told me I'd finally hit a nerve. Back at the farmhouse, the air felt heavier, the silence thicker. I sat in Grandpa's old chair, staring at the deed lying on the table. Every inch of that land was soaked in history and stubbornness. I wondered if he'd predicted this, if he'd known Diane would come. My phone buzzed. Walter Franklin's calm voice came through. "Good news and bad news, Alex. The judge granted the injunction, but they've already filed an appeal. You've bought time, not peace." "How much time?" "A week, maybe." He paused. "Be careful. These people don't like losing." He was right. By sundown, I got my first message from Sunny Pines HOA, a $500 parking violation for my own driveway. A photo attached showed my truck parked behind my farmhouse, captioned, "Unauthorized vehicle on common property." It would have been laughable if it didn't feel like the start of something darker. Mrs. Thompson stopped by later with a basket of cornbread and concern in her eyes. "You've stirred up a hornet's nest," she warned. "Diane's not used to anyone saying no." "Good," I said quietly. "She's about to hear it a lot." The next morning, I drove into town to gather allies. At the diner, I ran into Mr. Grayson, an old farmer who'd sold his property a few years ago. When I mentioned Diane's name, his face soured like spoiled milk. "That woman ruined me," he said. HOA fined me every week unapproved landscaping, unsightly workshop, you name it. They crushed me until I had to sell. "To who?" I asked. "A shell company." Later, I found out it was tied to Reynolds' husband. He slammed his mug on the counter. "She's been pulling that scam for years. Your grandpa was the last man she couldn't break." A pattern was forming, and it made my blood run cold. They'd been weaponizing bureaucracy, using fines and rules to bleed homeowners dry until they gave up. Diane wasn't building a community, she was building an empire, one stolen property at a time. Back home, I spread photos, documents, and names across Grandpa's desk like a detective building a case. My phone rang again, Walter's voice, urgent this time. "Judge granted our injunction officially. Construction halts effective immediately." I exhaled in relief. "That's one win." "Enjoy it," he said grimly, "because this is going to get ugly." I returned to the site that afternoon. The workers had stopped, machines silent, dust settling. Diane's black SUV was still there, parked like a throne on wheels. She stepped out, sunglasses hiding her fury. "You've cost us millions," she said. "You think you can stop progress? You're one man against a system. Then maybe it's time the system gets scared of one man." Her lips twisted. "Drop the case, Alex. I'll make you a deal. 7 figures. Walk away. This isn't about money. It's always about money," she hissed. "Not for me," I said, turning my back. "This is about what's right." That night, I couldn't sleep. The farmhouse groaned in the wind, and I could almost hear Grandpa's voice saying, "Keep digging, boy. The truth's underfoot." I went back to his office, searching for anything I'd missed. That's when I found the photo album labeled Community Picnic 2018. Page after page of smiling faces, families, shop owners, kids, all people my grandfather had helped. He wasn't just a farmer. He'd been the anchor of Meadow Creek. On the back of each photo, he'd written names and notes. Tom helped me repair the barn roof. Sarah donated tools after the storm. I realized these weren't just memories, they were connections. The real Meadow Creek wasn't in Diane's HOA meetings. It lived in these people. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. Fine. Notice. $500 unapproved vehicle storage. Another text followed. Your water service is under review for maintenance violations. Then, another. Unauthorized property lighting. Each message came faster, one after another, a digital barrage of harassment. It wasn't just paperwork anymore. It was warfare. I looked out the window. Headlights glowed at the end of the driveway, security SUVs, engines idling. They were watching me, testing how far I'd go. I grabbed Grandpa's letter from the table, read it again, and whispered, "Further than you think." The following morning, I woke to find my driveway blocked by concrete barriers. A handwritten sign read, "Access closed pending HOA approval." My blood boiled. I called the sheriff's office, but the deputy sighed. "Civil dispute, sir. Best handle it through court." "So they can barricade my house?" "Technically, if it's under boundary review," he trailed off. "You've got to be kidding me." I hung up. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. Diane Reynolds. "Enjoying the view?" she asked sweetly. "You can't block access to my property," I said. "Actually, according to county records, that driveway crosses Sunny Pines' common ground. We're within our rights." "You know damn well those records are fake," she laughed softly. "Let me explain how this works, Alex. The commissioner plays golf with my husband every Sunday. The building inspector's daughter works for me. The water department supervisor lives in Sunny Pines. See the pattern? You can't win this, but I'm generous. Sign over the disputed acres, drop your claims, and this all goes away. I'll even pay you for your trouble." Her arrogance burned hotter than the sun outside. "You can't buy integrity, Diane." "No," she replied, "but I can buy everyone else's. You have until tomorrow." The line went dead. I stood there, gripping my phone, feeling the walls closing in. By noon, a county inspector arrived, clipboard in hand. "Routine check?" he said with a shrug. "Your wiring's out of code. Septic needs replacement. Porch railing's unsafe." He handed me a list that would cost thousands. All needs fixing immediately. When I tried to argue, he smiled. "Talk to the HOA." By evening, my water slowed to a trickle, then stopped. My lights flickered. When I called the utility company, the operator said vaguely, "Maintenance in progress." My delivery orders were canceled because no such address existed in their system. Diane's empire was closing every door I had left. I sat on the porch that night, staring at the silent bulldozers in the distance. My phone buzzed with a text from Walter. "They filed a countersuit claiming your documents are forged. Court date in 3 months." I stared into the darkness. 3 months. By then, the homes would be finished. The land would be gone. That's when headlights cut through the night again. A car maneuvered around the barriers and stopped near the porch. I tensed, ready for more harassment. But it wasn't Diane's SUV. It was Gerald Fisher, the HOA treasurer, the quiet man from the meeting who had seemed nervous when I revealed the surveys. He stepped out, glancing over his shoulder. "I shouldn't be here," he whispered. "If Diane finds out, why are you here?" I asked. He reached into his coat and pulled out a flash drive. "Because what she's doing isn't right. I've been keeping the books for 7 years. You need to see this." Inside, at my kitchen table, he opened his laptop. Spreadsheets, emails, meeting minutes, a digital map of corruption. "She's been siphoning HOA funds," he explained. "Special fees that disappear, contracts awarded to family members. Last year, every homeowner paid $2,000 for road repairs. The actual cost? Half that. The rest went to companies she owns under fake names." He scrolled faster. "And those 20 houses built on your land? People have complained about drainage problems for years. She ignores them because she knows the truth. She doesn't own the ground they're on." I stared at the screen, pulse pounding. "Why help me now?" "Because you're the first person who's made her scared," Gerald said quietly. We've all been waiting for someone like you." As if on cue, my phone buzzed again, this time texts of support. "We stand with you. She fined us for having kids' toys in the yard. We're tired of her control." Dozens of messages poured in from neighbors I'd never met. It was like a dam breaking. Fear was turning into anger, and anger into unity. I looked up at Gerald. "You just gave me something Diane can't fight." "What's that?" he asked. "The truth," I said. "And the people who've lived under her tyranny." The rain started outside, a soft drizzle over the empty fields. The bulldozers looked like skeletons in the mist. "We're done playing defense," I told him. "Tomorrow, we start fighting back." Gerald nodded, slipping the flash drive into my hand. "Be careful, Alex. She's dangerous when cornered." "So am I," I said. That night, as the rain drummed on the roof, I thought of Grandpa's words again. The best trap isn't one your enemy walks into. It's the one they help you build without knowing it. Diane had just given me every piece I needed. Her arrogance, her fraud, her victims. All I had to do now was pull the pin. By sunrise, my faucets hissed out nothing but air. The fridge hummed weakly until the power finally died. Diane Reynolds thought she could starve me off my own land by shutting down everything that made life possible. She didn't understand people raised on farms don't break that easy. I sat at the kitchen table staring at Gerald's flash drive. On it lived the truth. 7 years of fraud, fake invoices, vanished dues. If I played it right, her entire empire would collapse under its own paperwork. Mrs. Thompson was first to notice the trucks parked outside my gate. "She's trying to block you in again," she warned, handing me coffee through the porch screen. Concrete barriers now sealed the driveway like prison walls. When I called the sheriff, he sighed. "Civil dispute, sir." Translation: Diane had friends in every office worth a bribe. Minutes later, my phone rang her number. "Morning, Alex." "Rough night?" she purred. "You can't do this," I said. "Actually, I can. County records confirm that Access Road belongs to Sunny Pines. You'll find life much easier if you sign those transfer papers today." "Not happening." Her laugh was low and slow. "Then consider this a preview of how bad things can get." By noon, the county inspector returned with another clipboard. Fire code violations, electrical hazards, septic issues. Each word felt rehearsed. Behind him, HOA security idled in SUVs, watching like vultures. When I protested, he shrugged. "Talk to Miss Reynolds." It was bureaucratic suffocation, 1,000 paper cuts designed to make me bleed money. That night, rain started to fall, thin and cold. I sat by candlelight, reading Grandpa's letter again. If they ever come for it, fight with proof, not anger. Proof I had plenty. Anger, even more. Around 9 p.m., headlights cut through the storm. For a second, I thought it was more harassment, but it was Gerald. He stepped from his car, water dripping from his coat. "I shouldn't be here," he whispered. "If Diane finds out, then let's make it worth the risk." We huddled over his laptop on the kitchen table. He showed me line after line of missing money, special assessments that vanished, contracts funneled to shell companies, even security payments going to Diane's son-in-law. "She runs Sunny Pines like a monarchy," Gerald said. "Half the homeowners hate her. They're just afraid." As he spoke, my phone buzzed with new messages, numbers I didn't recognize. "We support you." "She fined us for planting vegetables. Please don't give up." The trickle became a flood. Every story mirrored the next fines for the color of doors, threats over porch swings, punishments for children's laughter past 7 p.m. Diane had built her kingdom on fear, and now her subjects were whispering rebellion. I looked at Gerald. "If they're this angry, we can turn whispers into a roar." He hesitated. "Be careful. She'll burn everything to keep control." "Then let her," I said. "We'll build something better from the ashes." The next morning, my water was gone completely. So was the electricity. My refrigerator stank of spoiled food. I took it as confirmation I was winning. Desperation makes tyrants sloppy. I grabbed a notebook and started a list of names Mrs. Thompson had mentioned, families Diane had crushed with petty rules, 15 in all. I spent the day knocking on doors, showing them my documents, my injunction, and Gerald's data. Fear flickered in their eyes at first, but when I said, "She can't find you for truth," something shifted. Hope. Real, dangerous hope. Sarah Jenkins invited me in for lemonade. Her husband sat silent beside her, fists clenched. "She made us dig up our tomato garden," Sarah said. Vegetables weren't aesthetically compliant. We paid $500. The Patels told me about a $900 fine for hanging a child safety fence. The Johnsons whispered about repainting their front door 3 times to satisfy Diane's vision standards. Every story fed the same truth: control disguised as community. By sunset, I had 27 signatures of people ready to fight back. That night, I called Walter Franklin. "Can we legally form a new homeowners group?" I asked. "On your land, yes. For existing residents, gray area. But if their homes sit on your property, the HOA contract may be void." That was all I needed. "I'm taking their community center tomorrow," I said. Walter chuckled. "They'll never let you use it. They don't own it. I do." At dawn, I printed 200 flyers. Emergency community meeting your home may be at risk. I included copies of Grandpa's survey and Gerald's financial records. By evening, cars filled every inch of the community center lot. People packed the hall, voices buzzing with fear and curiosity. Diane arrived last, red blazer sharp as blood. "This meeting is unauthorized," she barked. "Everyone leave." Sarah Jenkins stood up from the second row. "Or what? More fines?" The crowd erupted in applause. For the first time, Diane looked unsure. I stepped to the front. "I didn't come here to start trouble," I said, raising my hands. "I came because my grandfather's land was stolen. But after hearing your stories, I realized he wasn't the only one robbed." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "We all deserve better." One by one, residents stood and told their tales: fines, threats, humiliation. Tears flowed, voices cracked, but no one left. When they finished, I held up the original survey. These homes were built on disputed land. Contracts based on fraud don't hold. Together, we can form something new, transparent, fair, honest. "You can't do that," Diane snapped, storming toward me. "These properties are bound to Sunny Pines HOA by law." "Laws built on lies don't stand long," I answered. The room cheered. Even Gerald, still the treasurer by title, nodded from the corner. "Let's vote," someone shouted. Hands shot up everywhere. 89 families joined on the spot. The roar that followed shook the ceiling. Diane's face drained of color. She marched up to me, eyes blazing. "You've made a terrible mistake. By tomorrow, you'll regret ever stepping foot here." "Is that a threat, Miss Reynolds?" "It's a promise." What she didn't see was the quiet figure sitting in the back, Tanya Williams, reporter for the Meadow Creek Gazette, phone recording every word. When Diane slammed the door behind her, Tanya met my eyes and mouthed, "Got it." Outside, thunder rolled again, like the land itself was applauding. We turned fear into defiance, and Diane had handed me her confession on camera. I drove home through sheets of rain, adrenaline still burning. Mrs. Thompson waited on the porch with a lantern. "How did it go?" she asked. "They chose freedom," I said simply. She smiled through tears. "Your grandfather would have been proud." Lightning flashed over the half-built homes. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "we finish what he started." Inside, I uploaded Gerald's files to a secure drive, sent copies to Walter and Tanya, then sat listening to the storm. Somewhere out there, Diane Reynolds was realizing her kingdom had cracks, and once cracks start, walls don't stop breaking. By morning, headlines blazed across town. HOA corruption allegations, shake Sunny Pines. Tanya's article detailed every fraudulent invoice, every illegal boundary change. Local radio played sound bites from the meeting. People finally saw the monster behind the manicured lawns. Diane responded by sending security trucks to patrol the neighborhood, her attempt at control through intimidation. But something had changed. Homeowners came out onto porches, filming them with phones. Fear had flipped sides. Gerald texted mid-afternoon, "She's panicking. Board meeting tonight. Want in?" Absolutely. At 7 p.m., I walked into the HOA office uninvited. Half the board refused to meet my eyes. Gerald placed a stack of documents on the table. "The finances are a mess," he said. "Funds missing, illegal transfers." Diane slammed her palm down. "Enough! You're all fools if you think this outsider cares about you. He just wants a payday." I looked at her, calm and steady. "The only thing I want is my grandfather's land back, and your grip on these people gone." She glared at the board. "Anyone siding with him is finished." Silence. Then one member quietly said, "We're already finished, Diane." The meeting dissolved into chaos. I left before the shouting turned to screaming. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air felt lighter. As I reached my truck, my phone buzzed Tanya again. "Environmental survey just came in. You need to see this." My stomach flipped. "What is it?" "Proof Sunny Pines is building on federally protected wetlands." I smiled for the first time in days. Grandpa had always said the land itself would protect those who protected it. Maybe he'd been right all along. The trap was nearly complete, and Diane Reynolds had helped build every inch of it herself. The sound of engines woke me before sunrise. Red and blue lights flashed through the blinds. For a moment, I thought Diane's threats had finally turned violent. I stepped onto the porch barefoot, half expecting a bulldozer or another blockade. Instead, I found 3 police cars lined up in the driveway, and Diane Reynolds herself standing next to the chief like she'd just won the war. "Morning, Alex," she called, voice sweet and poisonous. "Time to face the music. You're trespassing on private property." "Private?" I asked calmly, grabbing the folder from the kitchen table. "Chief Williams, before you do anything, you might want to look at these." I handed him my grandfather's deed and the original land surveys, stamped and verified. Diane's smugness faltered for the first time as the chief flipped through the documents. "These haven't been authenticated," she said sharply. "They have," another voice cut in. A woman stepped out from a county vehicle I hadn't noticed before. Carolyn Mitchell, Records Office. "We pulled the original surveys last night." Diane froze. "Why would you do that?" Carolyn met her gaze evenly. "Because someone reported inconsistencies in your filings." I smiled faintly. "Maybe the land's fighting back." Carolyn spread the old maps across the hood of a cruiser. According to these, the property lines were illegally altered in 1973, again in 1997, both times with falsified signatures. Everything from the eastern fields to the Sunny Pines clubhouse legally belongs to the Miller estate. The chief let out a low whistle. "That's a lot of real estate." "It's nonsense," Diane shouted. "This is a scam to extort the HOA." "Speaking of scams," I said, pulling another folder from my truck, "you might want to look at these, too." Inside were Gerald's financial records, 7 years of missing funds and shady contracts. As the chief flipped through the pages, his face darkened. "Miss Reynolds, can you explain why over $400,000 in homeowner dues were transferred to Sunshine Consulting, LLC, registered to your son-in-law? That's a legitimate vendor," she snapped. "And Meadow Legal Partners?" I asked. "Owned by your brother." For the first time, Diane stuttered. You don't understand. These are operational expenses." The chief closed the folder slowly. "You're going to need to come with us, ma'am. You can't do this," she screamed, backing away. "Do you know who I am? My husband plays golf with Judge Harrington." "Then you can discuss it over 9 holes," the chief said flatly, motioning her into the car. The sound of handcuffs closing was louder than any thunder that morning. As the convoy pulled away, I stood on the porch, heart pounding. Carolyn lingered. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "To the homeowners, the development?" "No one's losing their homes," I said firmly. "But construction stops until we can restore the original boundaries and the wetlands my grandfather protected." She smiled. "He'd be proud." I watched the police cars vanish down the dusty road and whispered, "He's not done yet." By noon, the news had spread across Meadow Creek like wildfire. Local reporters, curious neighbors, even construction workers showed up at the farmhouse. Tanya Williams arrived with her camera crew. "It's everywhere, Alex," she said. Fraud charges, boundary forgery, environmental violations. Diane's name is poison now. Behind her, vans from major networks parked along the road. The media storm Diane had feared most was now reality, and the truth was front page news. That evening, I called an emergency town meeting at the high school auditorium, the only building big enough. Nearly 400 people showed up. Homeowners, laborers, officials, even families who had once defended the HOA. Fear and anger mingled in the air like a storm about to break. I stepped onto the stage, the lights harsh on my face. "My name is Alex Morgan," I began. "This land belonged to my grandfather, Joe Miller. I didn't come here to take from anyone. I came to protect what's right." Shouts erupted from the crowd. "What about our homes? Are we getting evicted? We'll sue if we have to." I raised my hands. "No one's losing anything. Every homeowner will receive a legitimate deed, signed and recorded properly under the Miller estate. You'll own your homes for real this time." The crowd quieted. I clicked to the next slide on the projector, an aerial map of the wetlands. "But some of this land can't be developed, not because I say so, but because it's protected by federal law." Murmurs rippled through the audience. "These wetlands," I continued, "aren't swamps. They're living systems that prevent floods, filter water, and shelter 3 endangered species. My grandfather fought to protect them 30 years ago. The papers I found prove he succeeded until someone buried the truth. A man in the front row stood, face tight with worry. I put my life savings into a lot over there. What happens to me?" "Fair question," I said. "We'll create a property exchange program. Anyone who bought land inside the protected area will get an equal value lot in the redesigned section. No one loses their investment." The tension in the room eased. Sarah Jenkins, voice shaking, took the microphone. 8 years, she said. 8 years under Diane's rules. We couldn't paint our doors, couldn't grow tomatoes, couldn't even let our kids play after sunset. She looked around. Is that really what community means? A hush fell. Then someone clapped. Then another. The sound built like a wave until the entire auditorium echoed with applause. "We can do better," I said when it quieted. "We form a new association, the Meadow Creek Community Alliance. Transparent budgets, fair rules, reasonable fees, real neighbors instead of dictators." By the end of the night, 300 people signed on. Even Gerald stood beside me, ready to rebuild what Diane had destroyed. The road ahead was long, but for the first time, Meadow Creek felt alive. The next 6 months were a blur of paperwork, surveys, and meetings. Diane fought back through lawyers, but the evidence was airtight. She eventually accepted a plea deal on fraud charges. Her empire crumbled overnight. Sunny Pines dissolved into bankruptcy, absorbed by the community it once oppressed. When the court finally recognized the original Miller boundaries, the judge's words felt like sunlight breaking through rain. Property rights restored. A year later, the land looked nothing like the war zone I'd first returned to. Grandpa's farmhouse had become the new community center, its porch painted sky blue, its walls lined with photos of the old days. Kids rode bikes down tree-shaded paths. Sarah's community garden thrived, rows of bright vegetables where bulldozers once stood. Every home had its own color, its own life. No more beige. No more silence, just laughter, music, and the scent of cut grass and freedom. One afternoon, I sat on that porch again, the same chair Grandpa used to rock in. Mrs. Thompson joined me, handing over a glass of lemonade. "Your grandfather would be bursting with pride," she said, gazing toward the wetlands, now protected by law. Beyond them, cranes worked on smaller eco-friendly homes, solar panels glinting in the sun. "He always said you were stubborn," she smiled. "Guess he was right," I laughed softly. He taught me the land doesn't belong to those who buy it. It belongs to those who care for it. She pointed toward the marsh. A blue heron lifted into the air, wings cutting through the golden light. The sight hit me harder than I expected. He fought the same battle once, Mrs. Thompson whispered. Different developers, same greed. Maybe he knew this day would come. I nodded. He set the trap decades ago. I just closed it. As evening fell, I looked around at the community that had risen from the wreckage. What started as revenge had become something bigger, redemption, maybe even healing. The people who'd once feared fines now built playgrounds and shared harvest festivals. The sound of hammers had turned from destruction to creation. The farm that nearly died had become a heartbeat again. Sometimes I still think about Diane Reynolds, her cold smile, her arrogance, her certainty that she owned everything she touched. But in the end, it wasn't me who defeated her. It was the truth she tried so hard to bury. Truth has roots. You can pave over it, drown it in lies, but it always breaks through the surface sooner or later. As the sun dipped behind the trees, I opened Grandpa's old notebook, his weather logs, his crop yields, and in the final page, a note written in his tidy script,